What are your thoughts on serverless technology? I'd love to get the kind of cliff notes from the man himself.
Well, so I think like anything, it can be a little bit overhyped, and I think that you can still do microservices well without serverless technology, but I do think, and I think it introduces challenges. Now, I think if you can overcome those challenges, it is a game-changing approach to building and deploying and managing applications. Mm-hmm. But I think it opens up a whole host of governance questions. I think that when the simplicity of deploying applications and just all it is really an endpoint and an invocation, and how do you charge that correctly? I don't know that companies are necessarily equipped to understand chargebacks on shared services in a serverless world. I think once you get through kind of the operational challenges of serverless, though, is where you really do start to drive value. I think if you take a step back and look at microservices, very, very hyped, I think overhyped. I think that people are driving tremendous value with microservices, but a lot of the companies that were coming to Level while I was still there in the day-to-day were not equipped as an organization to do microservices. They just aren't organizing cross-functional teams. Everything is geared towards a very waterfall approach to development. The teams are highly siloed, and it's just very difficult. And I think the same thing tends to apply with serverless. But if I'm building my own technology stack and I'm the CTO or influencing the decisions, I'm absolutely AWS, Lambda, serverless. But again, I don't know that it's necessarily right for
very interesting
for everybody.
So conceptually, you really love it, but you think that know that there is a significant more amount of management overhead involved, or kind
Absolutely.
of understanding involved in updating the technology or continuing to use it.
And the metadata repositories to know, how do I call this service? How do I invoke this operation? I still think that there are challenges for some organizations to adopt that type of programming mindset, but those that can, I think, can drive some real innovation.
That's neat.
And again, I do think Node is a great example of a technology that enables that.
Yeah, so we're using Node, React, we're using Swift native on iOS. We prefer kind of vanilla native just at our shop versus kind of the React native kind of cross-platform, and we've just found that it works so much better. So our kind of standard protocol is build the application in one or the other, iOS or Android, refine it, get it right, and then build the other operating system's counterpart.
That was largely the conclusion that we came to. I do think there are some platforms that are cross-platform development. For those listening who don't know, developing an iOS application is wildly different from developing an Android application. One's written in Java and one's written in C. And so there's a decision made pretty early on. Do I go native, or vendors have built these tools that enable you to build an application once and then it handles the details under the hood. In fact, a friend of mine started a company that created a product called Titanium Studio that I would argue was the first really good example of doing just that. And I think you have to look at the type of application that you're building. If it's a very white glove service and it's customer facing, I think you're going to have to go native. And the reason that you would prefer to go with the build once and then deploy at multiple places is you're managing, in theory, one code base, and you don't have to hire two completely different coding skill sets, which some people can do both very well, but there are a lot who can't. But the advantage to doing the challenge with doing a multi-platform approach is that you inherently build to the lowest common denominator. So if one platform has a feature before the other platform that may be GPS related or location services related, or it may be some sort of integration into a payment system, or there's all sorts of things going on in these arms races. Right. You as the developer of React Native or whatever the tool is that's cross-platform, you have to go to the lowest common denominator, which means that you end up leaving features off. And so as foldable phones come out, you're going to have to go native to take advantage of a foldable phone.
Right.
But the advantage, I think, where we would advise clients on the cross-platform is when you think about enterprise applications that are being rolled out, and especially when you're doing almost a lift and shift off of a green screen technology or a Windows MFC application or a VB6 application, and you say, I need to just get this onto a tablet as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
And these are enterprise users who don't care what it looks like, they don't care what it feels like, but
it's all utility at that point.
But I don't think you're ever going to see the next Instagram or Uber built
cross-platform.
On cross-platform.
I would concur with that.
Yeah. Although React Native is fantastic technology. I have heard the argument made that the problem with these cross-platforms is also that when updates are made to the underlying operating system, they may be slower to respond. And I don't know how true that is. I haven't seen any data on that. My reaction is the same thing happens in native, though. A new SDK gets released.
Comes out, you got to update it.
You've got to update it too. Exactly. And so you're not necessarily, you might control your own destiny a little bit, but I've got to imagine these cross-platform development paradigms have access to the same, they have the same early access to the new APIs, and so they should be rolling it out and giving you enough time to make whatever changes you need to make to your code base.
Right, that makes sense. No, that's well thought out there.
Very interesting. Are there any other key technologies for you? I take it a lot of AWS and Azure.
A lot of AWS, no Azure at all.
No Azure, interesting.
Yeah, I'm starting to dip my toes into Google Cloud a little bit just to check it out. I understand that it's a good bit cheaper than AWS, but I'm waiting to look at the entire kind of feature set and do some research myself before I make the decision that we're gonna do anything on Google Cloud.
Okay.
But yeah, right now it's.
So if your clients ask you, we need to be on Azure, what is the answer? Is the answer depends on how big you are to how much?
That is, yes, that is exactly the answer right now, because our answer would be, well, we currently don't have anything on Azure, so you would be the first, and you would essentially have to pay for our education sort of on it. Yeah, I drink the
You're
AWS.
a lot more honest than I am as a consultant. I've done thousands of Azure deployments.
All over the world, everywhere, in all the availability zones. No, I think for us, it's just, I would really want to understand why they need to stick to Azure before I would endorse that decision. And it's not because Azure is a bad platform or a bad service. It's just we know AWS so well at this point that it's hard for us to think about committing to another cloud service.
And are most of your clients going cloud native with AWS, or are they looking to be cloud agnostic and deployed on